How did I enter the autism field? I was born in the last century. You can see I'm very ancient. What is very important, it is the place where I was born. I was born in Siberia. Perhaps not everyone will understand it, but I will explain. I am not politically correct. Because in Siberia, at least at the time when I was born, people were very straightforward, very literal and very straightforward. So no nices, no smiles. They said what they thought. And, it was easy there. I was educated in Moscow and in Krasnoyarsk. I had several degrees, uh, but I started with linguistics. I loved languages. So I thought I will become a linguist and perhaps a lecturer, a teacher in linguistics, and that will be my life. No, I started like this. Like I was professor, head of the linguistics department at the university, lecturer on languages, theoretical and practical subjects, and teachers training. At the time, I lived in Ukraine, eastern part of Ukraine, in Gorlovka, where I was the head of the department. And I knew nothing about autism, though I did have psychology degrees, but it was so many years ago, and I don't remember if our lecturers mentioned autism at all. So I knew nothing about autism till 1988. You know who started the movement for autism awareness? It was the baby, my little son, who was born in 1988. That is why I divide my life into two parts: before Alyosha was born and after Alyosha was born, because everything changed. He was born, as they said, normal, no problem whatsoever. But suddenly, the same doctor who said, "Don't worry, everything is fine, he's developing normally," suddenly he said, "You are invited to the special commission because the development of your child is abnormal." And my son at the time was only 3 years old. What did they say? They said, forget about him, place him to the special institution. Specialists will be there, and focus on your baby daughter. At the time, my daughter was just 1 month old, and I couldn't take it. I disagreed. Actually, mentally, I diagnosed them as idiots, officially diagnosed them in my mind, and decided I will find out what's wrong with my baby. I found a specialist in Lvov. It is in the western part of Ukraine, 24 hours by train from the place where we lived. I took my baby, I got an appointment, and we went there. And I told her everything about his development, what happened, how he was born, how he developed. And she was writing down something, and she didn't look at me. She was listening and writing down everything I said, and she didn't say a word. So my question was, what is it? I couldn't understand why she didn't talk. Why didn't she tell me what is wrong? So I asked her my questions. What is it? Is it dangerous? He won't die, will he? And the answer, I couldn't accept it, of course, but the answer was, it would be better if he had died. This was the end of the consultation because I took my boy and we went home. And that's when I made a decision. If there are no specialists who can help me with my boy, I have to become a specialist myself. But still, I needed more information. I didn't know what was different, what was wrong with him. Of course, luck was on my side. An American psychiatrist visited Gorlovka, and he came to our university. And perhaps he heard from my colleagues that I was worried about my son. And he said, "Do you want me to have a look at your boy?" He came to the place where we lived. And he said one word, oh, it's classic autism. This was the first time I heard the word, and I was happy. You wouldn't believe it. I was really happy. I didn't know much, but I knew the name. And I knew if I know the name, I will find out everything I can about it. I lived in Donetsk region, eastern Ukraine, with the population of more than 3 million people. And in the 1990s, there were no autistic individuals diagnosed, neither children nor adults. They were diagnosed either with schizophrenia or perhaps mental retardation, the terminology of the time, and no autism, no need for services for autistic children and adults. All these undiagnosed children were not only labeled schizophrenic and mentally retarded, or both, by the way. They thought, the specialists, that if the child could talk, he couldn't be autistic. It's only non-verbal autism was recognized at the time. I know about it because I went to Kiev to talk to the chief psychiatrists, and I managed to get this appointment. And he was laughing at me when I mentioned nonverbal and verbal autism because they say, no, it's impossible. If the child can talk, even if he or she is echolalic, he cannot be autistic. So you see, I could see that not only me who was ignorant in the topic, but before we can educate our autistic children, we have to educate our specialists. And before we can help our children, we have to unite our efforts. I was sure that my boy was not the only one in 3 million people in Donetsk area. So I wrote a very short article into local newspaper explaining the symptoms, Alyosha's behaviors, and said, I will be at the university every Thursday from this time to that time. If you recognize your child, please come, and then we will help each other. And the first Thursday, I remember this day, 16 families came. I knew I was not alone, and together we could do a lot. I asked this American psychiatrist and the other friends I had in England and in America to send me information about autism. And I got a lot. Not as much as now, because now everyone knows about autism. At the time, very few publications and very few books, but still I got them on. And what is good for me now, I know that, there are two schools or three schools on autism, like American school and British school and European. So the approaches are a bit different. I am lucky that I wasn't sort of educated in one school only. I could compare, I could make my own conclusions from what I've read and from what I heard about it. And that's why I started educating myself. I read nights and nights, because during daytime I was at the university, working at the university. And then all these parents, 16 families, came to my small room in the students' hostel and asked me questions. And I was telling them everything I've read the night before. It was like school, autism studies, autism awareness studies at the time. It was all in 1990s. And then I started writing leaflets and different publications and a short book about, I don't know, under 100 pages, autism definitions and diagnosis. We get it published, self-published, of course. And I took these books to specialists. I have to educate specialists. I think they hated me because they thought, I know behind my back they called me uh, mad professor or crazy professor, and encouraged me to work with my students, not with unteachable and unmanageable children. But I didn't want to waste any time. These children were kept at home because these 16 families, the first 16 families who came to me, they refused to put their children into these special institutions outside towns and cities and forget about them. They kept them at home without any help from social services or whatever. And that is why we decided to start our own school. And our school is what's called From Despair to Hope. And we started it in my little room in the students' hostel. I started working 3 days a week for 2 hours with first two or three children. Then we started renting places, and more parents came, more and more children came to our school, and we started hiring teachers. I educated teachers, and I was the first teacher, but then, more children came, and I needed helpers. And on the 1st of September in 1995, we opened our first class of 4 children. And these are exercise box of a few children with whom I started working. On the left, it is how we started. That is, squares, sort of motor skills were terrible. So we were holding their hands first and teaching them to draw circles, squares, and so on. And just in 10 months, they could do some sums already. Our children were so, I don't know, I remember them, they were so enthusiastic. They stayed at home long enough. They wanted to be with others, they wanted to learn. We organized all sorts of events for our children, and more children came. When I moved to England to the university to do my degree in autism, I wrote another dissertation, this time not linguistics, it's about sensory perception in autism and education in autism. But still, I couldn't just leave my school without any support. I found very good people whom I told this story, and they organized Reach Out, the UK charity to support the Storm School in Gorlovka. And we brought a lot of equipment and also met parents and gave consultations. And for many years, I continued to give consultations from England because my family is English, and now we live in England for 30 years, nearly 30 years. I wrote a dissertation titled A Reconstruction of the Sensory World of Autism, and it was published by the university. Though there were some disagreements while I chose the topic for my dissertation, I was sort of a laughing stock. It was the end of the 1990s. Sensory perception was not included into official diagnosis of autism, and people, specialists, by the way, not just lay people, said, why are you doing it? Nobody will be interested. Okay, now, surprise, surprise, sensory perception is in the center of research, and I'm really happy about it. Because, see, my experience working with these children, as I said, I wasn't sort of limited by strengths and schools of research. I could make my own conclusion. All these cognitive theories, yeah, they're good. Yes, it's fine. They explain some things. And behavior, these are on the surface. But I could see that my children, they saw, they hear, they smell, they perceive the world differently. And that's why I thought we lived in two parallel worlds, in two different worlds. And that is why we have so many problems and misunderstanding. And after that, I started developing, as I said, develop it further because its sensory perception explains a lot. It explains cognition, it explains language development, it explains why they develop language the way they do. Sensory perception explains echolalia and their literalness and so on and so forth. So my next book was communication issues in autism and Asperger syndrome. Do we speak the same language? And then the book followed theory of mind because I showed cognition and again its development on different perception and the triad of perspectives in autism. All these behaviors are on the surface. For me, it was clear. And the next book was Autism and the Edges of the Known World. It was a very difficult book because quite controversial topics are discussed there, and especially as it was published, I don't know, 10 years ago, perhaps 15 years ago. At the time, many people didn't want to open up, talk about it, telepathy and all this stuff. But for me, the more I learn, the more I understand that it is happening, that it is present in the lives of these people. And then autism and spirituality. I came to this book after all this preparation. I mean, it helped me a lot. All my research in sensory perception, cognition, language development, and all these controversial topics helped very much in my research of autism and spirituality. And by the way, the first two books were revised because a lot of more information became available. So second editions of sensory perceptual issues in autism and communication issues in autism were published recently. And some of the books were translated into quite a few languages like Dutch, Spanish, Russian, Romanian, Norwegian, Hungarian, Swedish, Hebrew, French, Italian, Czech, and Polish. Came the time when I decided I have to write for parents. Not just, all these books, parents do read these books as well, but to write as a mother, not just as an academic, whatever, but as a mother, to give my own experiences with my son and with the children and teenagers I worked with. And that's why I decided to write a series of books under the title Autism Becoming a Professional Parent. So, what I've learned from children, teenagers, and adults with autism. And there are, it's like university for parents. I write about difficult concepts, difficult topics, but in plain language. I mean, like I would talk to other mothers because this is the book I wanted to read when I knew very little about autism. That learning about autism never stops. I can tell you, the more I know about autism, the more I understand how little I know about it. And what is more, it is vital to unite our efforts and work together. Parents, professionals, and autistic individuals. Only together we can help these people and their families. And I've been both a teacher and a student. So I teach my children and then teenagers, and I learn a lot from them. Nothing would have happened without my babies. For more information about my work and my books, visit my website.